As you know, I have a bill to repeal the roadless rule, H.R. 7695, and I know that the administration is also working to repeal the roadless rule. The United States Forest Service Office created an environmental catastrophe when it issued the roadless rule in the final days of the Clinton administration. That lame duck decree, which has now been in effect for over a quarter of a century, unilaterally locked up 58.5 million acres of federal lands from effective management and realistic public access, including 3.2 million acres in my home state of Wyoming. I was hired by the state of Wyoming to file suit against the roadless rule because it violated NEPA, the Wilderness Act, the Wyoming Wilderness Act, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was also adopted with only 18 months of review between October of 2019 and January of 2021 when it was put into place. At the time that the roadless rule was adopted, the Forest Service and the Department of Justice knew that the roadless rule would be destructive. And how do I know that? Because during one of our hearings, the U.S. attorney from here in Washington, D.C. admitted it. What she stated is, we recognize that in certain areas, the roadless rule is going to be ecologically devastating. That phrase is burned into my mind, ecologically devastating. But it is more important that we have one rule and one regime coming out of Washington, D.C. to manage these acres than protecting local particular areas. The 2000 GAO report, as well as the comments submitted by foresters and land managers during the original rulemaking process for creating the roadless rule, repeatedly warned, that limiting road access would hinder active management for fuels reduction, insect and disease control, and ecological restoration in the interior West. Our prediction that the roadless rule would devastate large swaths of the interior West was confirmed by a 2021 Johnston study showing that roadless areas have burned at disproportionately higher rates despite being cooler and moister. 25 years later, the Forest Service and USDA report that 28 million acres of inventoried roadless areas, nearly half of the total lands that the Forest Service has, are now at high or very high wildfire hazard potential. Over 8 million acres have burned since 2001. In your view, what impact has the roadless rule had with regard to wildfire risk in our national forests and surrounding lands?
Ms. Hageman, Mr. Chairman, it's definitely increased catastrophic wildfire risk for sure.
And how does the roadless rule conflict with other federal land management statutes and the Forest Service's multiple use mandate?
Ms. Hageman, Mr. Chairman, what it does is it inhibits our ability to manage land just as you outlined, right? So without road access, and as we know in Wyoming in particular, there's a lot of roaded areas in roadless based on how those maps are drawn. So it inhibits our ability to actively manage land, to protect communities, so to get engines in there to fight fire, whether it's doing fuels treatments, as you indicated, or to do active timber sales, even public access, right? It limits public's access to enjoy their national forest. So all of those things are at risk with the rule as it's currently drafted.
So I appreciate your work and your efforts to repeal that. We've had 25 years of a failed experiment. We now know what the roadless rule has wrought for our national forest and surrounding lands, and it is time to repeal it, both regulatorily as well as through my bill that I have introduced. I'm running out of time, but I also want to thank you. I know that Mr. Boren's name has been raised several times today by the Democrats, by the folks on the other side of the aisle. I don't know why. I assume that they're going to target him and try to attack him and try to force him out of the administration, because they do that. You can watch it happen with a variety of people, the way that they will target someone by name and then start trying to force them out by creating controversy. I want to thank Mr. Boren for the work that he has done on behalf of not my constituents, but actually constituents in Oregon. We had a hearing on water, wildlife, and fisheries talking about the ability to clear rights of way for utilities. And one gentleman from Oregon came and testified that he was here, and 30 years earlier, his predecessor had been sitting in that exact same chair talking about a particular right-of-way, and they had been unable to clear that right-of-way for over 30 years, and the wildfire risk associated with that was astronomical. The secretary was watching that hearing. She texted me immediately, put me in contact with Mr. Boren. I put Mr. Boren in contact with the head of that particular utility, and within a matter of weeks, they had 2 right-of-ways that were cleared out. They got the necessary permits. So Oregon has actually benefited dramatically dramatically from this administration, your work, Mr. Boren's work, so I want to thank you for that. And with that, I yield back.
Tensions boiled over on Capitol Hill today as the House Federal Lands Committee looked ahead to the 2026 wildfire season. The central target, a controversial, 25-year-old environmental policy that critics claim is actively fueling America's wildfire crisis. Representative Harriet leveled a face attack on the Clinton-era Roadless Rule, calling it an environmental catastrophe that unilaterally locked up 58.5 million acres of federal land from effective management. Hageman, who is pushing Bill H.R. 7695 to repeal the rule, recalled a chilling admission from a U.S. attorney during past litigation. We recognize that in certain areas the Roadless Rule is going to be ecologically devastating. According to Hageman, that devastation is now reality. She pointed to data showing nearly half of these roadless areas, 28 million acres, are now high-risk wildfire tinderboxes. Testifying before the committee, Forest Service official Ms. Hageman agreed with Hageman's assessment, stating point-blank, "It's definitely increased catastrophic wildfire risk for sure. It inhibits our ability to actively manage land to protect communities." Before yielding her time to Chief Schultz, Hageman also jumped to the defense of administration official Mr. Bourne, whom she claimed was being unfairly targeted by committee Democrats. She praised Bourne's recent work fast-tracking a utility right-of-way permit in Oregon that had been mired in bureaucratic gridlock for 30 years, preventing a massive fire hazard. What we're seeing here is a fundamental clash over what conservation means in the era of megafires. For a quarter century, the Roadless Rule was celebrated by environmentalists as a shield against commercial logging. But ecosystems are dynamic. By blocking motorized access, the policy accidentally created massive, unmanageable fuel loads. When federal land managers themselves openly admit in a congressional hearing that a preservation rule increases catastrophic fire risk, the political calculus has to change. While Hageman's total repeal faces a steep uphill battle in Congress, the takeaway is clear. The hands-off preservation tactics of 2001 are failing under modern climate realities. If we want to save these forests from burning to the ground, Washington must trade rigid, blanket bans for active, localized management.